Oshkosh Media is government programming on GovTV, community programming on Life TV, and community radio on Oshkosh FM 101.9.
Welcome to the City Manager's Report, a look at city updates and a preview of the next Oshkosh Common Council meeting agenda.
And thanks for joining us for this edition of the City Manager's Report. I'm Andy Radig, and in a moment we'll be joined by City Manager Mark Rohloff. In the first half of today's show, we'll have some municipal news updates, including information from city departments and news that residents can use. In the second half, we'll highlight some items from the upcoming Tuesday, May 14th Oshkosh Common Council meeting agenda. And with that, we bring in our City Manager, Mark Rohloff. Mark, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here, Andy.
All right. Well, we have a lot to talk about today, and I know that property owners recently have been mailed their notices of changed assessment, and if they haven't received them, they will be receiving them very soon. So we want to talk about this a little bit and kind of explain some of the background information about this and maybe correct some of the incorrect information that's out there.
Well, there's a lot of anxiety because there's a lot of misunderstanding, and that's certainly warranted and everything. But I think part of our job is to make sure that people understand what it is, and more importantly, what it is not, because there's a lot of people that have some misconceptions. But the first thing I think is important to point out is that all properties in Oshkosh are being revalued this year to reflect the current market conditions. Mm-hmm. So what we're trying to do is get ourselves up to date on what property values are for purposes of determining, how we distribute our property tax bill. Oshkosh, like every other community in the state, is required by the state to complete this revaluing process and to be within 10% of what's considered full market value once in a 5-year period. So we have not been at that within 10% since 2019. 2020, we fell below that 10% range, and we've been dropping ever since, and quite a bit in the last couple of years. So we're actually below, we're 30% out of market based on today's estimate, which is actually last year's estimate. So we're pretty far out. So the last time we did a revaluation was back in 2017. Okay. And I can tell you, based on everything from the housing market crash of 2008, that our values remained fairly steady for that entire decade. So what's been happening in recent years has been a sizable increase. But the purpose of this is to reset the distribution of the property tax pie, and that's done through what are the values. We're required by state law, and the state constitution requires that people be taxed on an equitable basis. So it's called the uniformity clause. So revaluation is part of this process. Mm-hmm.
And it is important to point out that if a property owner's assessed value increases, it does not mean that the tax bill will increase in that same amount.
Correct. So, first off, the residential notices have been mailed. I think most residences have seen theirs. Commercial notices are going to be mailed around May 26th. So it doesn't mean that the tax bill will increase by the same amount. And we've got, we've been showing a variety of graphics, and I hope I can do justice to it, and certainly want to explain that. But people want to know, what the mill rate is, because that's really important to them. The mill rate is simply a number that's created by the total taxes needed that for the city, which is called the levy, divided by total assessed value. So the total assessed value, if that increases, then the mill rate itself will go down. But it really, and I can't emphasize this enough, and this is where our public officials, the city council, they have to hold themselves accountable, but they're also governed by state law. Mm-hmm. We do not have unlimited authority to increase the levy. There is something called levy limits that we are under. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you that over the last few years, our average levy increase has been about 3 to 4%. That's pretty steady. So the average bill is going to go up 3 to 4%. That's pretty much what council has been doing the last few years, and I suspect that they would behave similarly given the circumstances. But because the value is going to increase quite a bit, that will lower the mill rate, because we can't collect any more than what the state law says we can. Plus, the council has an obligation to be responsive to property owners and voters, that they don't go crazy. So that mill rate is still in that formula that you see here. But even though the average value increase is going to be about 50%. Now, let's be clear. Commercial's probably going to be going up only about 30%, and that's a weird thing that I say only 30%. And on average, residential is going to go up about 70%. There are different markets for different prices of housing, different types of housing. But if you see your residential value going up 70%, that's about average for the resident. But if we use 50%, because that's what applies to everybody, if you take a look at this example, and what we plugged in here was assuming that the levy were to go up about 4%. I wanted to just be fully disclosure about that. So you can see that the bill would go up from $3,600 to $3,750 if the previous year's tax was $3,600. 4% more is about $3,750. What you'll see is, in order to collect that extra money, the mill rate would go down from 0.024 to 0.015. That's the example of how that's done. And the other thing we have in that little box is, we're not the only taxing entity. Everybody, because we send out the property tax bill, we send it out on behalf of all of the taxing jurisdictions. That's us, and we're close to 40% of that. The school district's about another 40%, and then the county and the Voc Tech district, Fox Valley Tech, counts for the other 20%. So we don't control what they're under, but I can tell you that all of the governmental entities that do property taxes are governed by a property tax limit. So they can't tax any more than what the state allows. So that's the real governor on people being concerned. I can tell you that even if your value has gone up, the average residential 70%, I can tell you, I know a lot of people whose value has gone up that much. That's quite common. That doesn't mean the taxes are going to go up 70%. Please, everybody, look at the levy. The levy's not going to get set by council until October or November. Usually they give us direction in August anyway, so that as we're preparing the budget, we know what cap the council has set on us. I expect council will do something similar to what they've done in previous years. So the average bill is only going to go up about whatever council says it's going to be. And it's been going the 3-4% rate. Please understand that. Now, because of the variation between commercial and residential will be picking up a slightly larger share. That is very clear. But for people to think that their taxes are going up by some astronomical rate, I assure you that's not the case. Folks, I've been doing this for 40 years. I've gone through a lot of revaluations. This is the highest one I've ever seen. Absolutely the highest. But the same principle applies. So that's really important for us. So I think it might be good for us to go to a video that we got from our friends up north in Canada to maybe describe this. So maybe we can go to that video.
I want to explain to you how assessment and taxation work. Let's start off by creating a small town with only 3 houses. Each house is different and has a different value. The first house has a market value of $200,000. The second house has a value of $250,000. And the third house is valued at $350,000. The city supplies services, and the money to pay for these services is recovered through property taxation. Let's imagine that the town needs to collect $1,200 to pay for these services. To calculate the tax rate, you divide the cost to provide services by the total assessed value of all the properties in the town. This establishes a tax rate. Now, to calculate how much tax each home pays, we multiply the tax rate by the assessment. As you can see, the first house would pay $300, the second home would pay $375, and the highest valued home would pay $525. Let's summarize what we've covered so far. 1. Assessment places a market value on each property. 2. the total assessment is used to calculate the tax rate. And 3, taxes pay for the cost of city services, like roads, fire protection, snow removal, parks, etc. Let's imagine that another year has passed and that property values have increased by 4%. Now, let's imagine that the cost of providing services has remained the same, $1,200. The tax rate is the cost of services divided by the total assessment. The result is that all owners still pay the same tax as before because the cost of services has not changed. Let's summarize what we've covered so far. 1. Assessment increase does not necessarily mean more taxes are collected. 2. If all assessments go up equally, everyone pays the same as long as the cost of services stays the same. Now, let's imagine another year passed and values did not increase at the same rate. Home 1 remained at the same value, $208,000. Home 2 increased by 1%, $262,600. And Home 3 increased 3%, $374,920. The cost of services stayed the same at $1,200. Here's the math. $1,200 divided by the new assessment total equals the new tax rate. The net effect of the new values sees House 1 paying less tax and the house that went up 3% paying a higher proportionate share. If all assessments do not go up equally, there's a redistribution of the tax. However, the total tax collected remains the same. What happens if the cost of services goes up? Let's do the math. Services now cost $1,400. The result is a different tax rate. As you can see, an increase in service cost results in a tax increase. But suppose that the cost of services went up, but also one more home was now built in the town and it was worth $300,000. The new total assessment is now $1,145,520. This results in a new tax rate. The new house now helps pay for the cost of services, and the result is that everyone pays less. This is a hypothetical representation of how the process works. The key points are: 1. Total assessment value is used to calculate tax rates. 2. An increase in property value does not always mean an increase in taxes. 3. New construction helps pay the overall tax burden. 4. Taxes are based on the cost of providing services that citizens want and need. And that explains how assessment and taxation works.
So we did want to point out that under the city's website, under Hot Topics, there is a lot more information available about revaluation in Oshkosh. There's some frequently asked questions available, and there's a video that is produced talking about our Oshkosh revaluation. So a lot of resources there. We encourage you to check that out. It is a very complex topic, so if you'd like to dive into it more and get those explanations, there's more information there. All right. Well, Mark, I know another item that has been appearing lately are on vehicle registration fee notifications, that there has been an additional fee added, and this is to cover special assessments in the city of Oshkosh.
Right. This is one of the ways that the council made a decision to cover pavement-related special assessments and how they'll be paid. And the vehicle registration fee was part of that. These are things to cover road and sidewalk reconstruction and sidewalk rehabilitation. So if you have a June sticker or later, you're going to start seeing that $35 fee. And they even though it's technically not called a wheel tax, on the DOT's notice that they're sending out, it's big letters, City of Oshkosh wheel tax. It's going to be $35. So, I've been asked a question, and I was kind of surprised myself that it started coming with the June stickers or later. The June sticker technically doesn't take effect until July 1. So that's where the state made the determination that the fee is getting tacked on now. So if you're getting notices for June, because your sticker is good until July 1, technically that's the effective date from their standpoint. I don't think the state made that real clear, but I think we have an obligation to explain it, and I think we own part of that too, that we need to explain that. So that's the case. It's going out there now, but the assessments are going away, so that's a good thing. So a lot of frequently asked questions on our city website under Hot Topics, right, Andy?
Absolutely. Just like the other topics there, we also have more information about special assessments right there, vehicle registration fee. You can learn more there and kind of dive into the details about what is all involved in that particular topic. Okay, we have some good news, Mark.
We've had a couple rough topics here, but I think everybody needs to know about those. But yeah, let's talk about some fun stuff now.
So it's great to be listed as number one on the list of good things. So a recent study ranks Oshkosh as the best place in the United States for new college graduates.
Yeah, this was smartasset.com released a study that takes into account a lot of things, including an area's unemployment rate, the average income for bachelor's degree holders, cost of living for single adults, which includes housing affordability, and the percentage of population in their 20s. And so some of those stats, Oshkosh has an unemployment rate of 0.5%, which is extremely low. Mm-hmm. Average bachelor's degree holder makes over $61,000 annually, and 16% of the population is between ages 20 to 29, according to the survey. And so those are the factors, along with housing affordability, that gave us such a high ranking. And so if you wonder what our competition was that we beat out, some very nice communities. Lawrence, Kansas was number 2. College Station, Bryan, Texas was number 3. Grand Forks, North Dakota is number 4. And our neighbor to the west, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, was in number 5. So I think, it says here it's a best place for new college graduates. I would like to say that it's a good place for old college graduates as well. We are a wonderful community, and I think this is just one example of those types of things, and I'm happy to crow about it.
Absolutely. We'll make sure everybody knows about that one. All right, we also, speaking of good things, we wanted to talk about our Oshkosh Fire Department, and they recently recognized some firefighters and some community members.
I was very happy to be part of that event. It was the Oshkosh Fire Department annual recognition dinner that was held on Saturday, April 20th, and awards were presented to our firefighters and EMS folks, as well as the community members who were selected through a nomination process. These individuals were recognized for going above and beyond the call of duty, or for the impact they've made by being a friend of the fire department, promoting some things. For example, the Reed School fire department themed playground, the parents who were part of the Reed School community were recognized because they saw it as an opportunity to promote the fire service on top of getting a great playground for the kids. So the fire department is so grateful for the community support in making this event possible. And I can tell you that it was a great event to recognize some really cool people that do wonderful work for our community.
Sure, and I know our fire department appreciates the community support that goes into allowing them to present this event as well. So glad to see that. Okay, another thing, a great thing for the city of Oshkosh is that the city was recently awarded a sustainability grant. And this will really allow for some improvements, sustainably speaking, for our facilities.
Yeah, this is certainly an initiative that the Sustainability Advisory Board likes to promote, and through the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin, there were energy innovation grants, and so they gave us this funding of over $55,000 for a comprehensive energy study that will provide recommendations on how the city can implement sustainable practices within our city facilities. So we're hoping that study will allow the city to apply for implementation grants to leverage city funds when we're installing energy efficient infrastructure in the future. So we're happy to get the grant, and we'll put it to good work to identify projects we can do in the future.
Okay, and speaking of sustainability, Terrace tree planting has gotten off to an early start this year. If folks see the folks working planting trees.
Well, we had some unseasonably warm weather in the spring, which allowed us to do an early start. So our folks are out there. We started in the Stevens Park neighborhood at the beginning of May, and we've made our rounds to some other parts of the community as well. So if you have questions about terrace trees, or if you would like to request one, just contact our landscape operations manager, our city forester, Travis Dirks, at 920-236-5080. That's 236-5080. And Forestry Division will be happy to come out and put up a tree.
Okay, very good. Then we also wanted to highlight that as far as folks, if they have a garbage recycling cart that has a broken or dilapidated lid, that they can actually get a replacement for the lid for that cart.
Yeah, I mean, there after this many years, you may start seeing some aging of the carts, and there could be cracks, holes, or some other type of damage. So the cost for the replacement lids is $50, but that includes we'll come out there, we'll deliver the lid, we'll install the lid, and dispose of the old one. So that's everything for $50. You can purchase them at the collections counter here at City Hall, and then we'll schedule us to come out and replace your lid. So if that's something you want to do, we're happy to do it.
Okay, very good. Well, Mark, I think from here we're actually going to get right into discussion of the upcoming City Council agenda. That meeting is coming up on Tuesday, May 14th at City Hall at 6 p.m. And diving right into the agenda, it looks like we start off the meeting with a presentation about the housing plan implementation. And I know that this has been an important topic, kind of getting into implementation of this study that was conducted.
Well, we all know that there is a demand for housing, and our housing study, which we completed last year, pointed that out. And so now it's time to start implementing some of that. So our staff will be making a presentation to talk about some things that we want to begin work on. Some is on the regulatory side to allow some things that are it's currently not allowed. So we're going to be specific about things we want to do. Things like accessory dwelling units on properties. It used to be called mother-in-law houses, things like that. But also things we can do with infrastructure to make it more affordable. And then the discussion about incentives that we might be able to do. You've seen some of the discussions we've had recently by acquiring the former Washington School, or the soon-to-be former Washington School, to put some housing there, because the infrastructure is already in the neighborhood. So it's things like that we can do to improve the housing stock and get some of these recommendations implemented.
Okay. And then following up after this item, there's a public hearing, and I believe that it's somewhat connected?
It is. It's coincidental that it's at the same time, but the housing element of the comprehensive plan needs to be updated in order for us to be qualify for grants and things like that through the state of Wisconsin. Fortunately, all that work we did with our housing study can apply towards the housing element of the comprehensive plan. So really what we're going to do is we're going to take the housing study stuff and insert it into the plan so that it very seamlessly gets updated, and then we can qualify for future grants. So we're excited to be doing that, and it's just part of the implementation phase to get this going. But we'll see ourselves qualifying for some grants in the near future as a result of that.
Okay, very exciting. That's good. All right, then if we take a look ahead under the consent agenda of the agenda, we have an item relating to the Grand Opera House Annex renovation, and I believe that this is for some design services.
Yeah, if everybody will recall, last year the council had approved working with the Grand Opera House on a combination where the Grand Opera House will raise $3 million to do a renovation that's going to be over $6 million. We put a requirement on the Grand that they needed to get a feasibility study done on the ability to raise their $3 million. And once they did that, we would authorize the design work to begin. They have met that requirement. They've provided us with the results of their feasibility study, which says that the possibility of doing this is very good. So they want to begin the fundraising process. So part of it is they want to see, donors want to see the design. So that was part of this. So this will authorize us to begin that design process. So we'll be excited to look at what the Grand will look like in the future with this proposed renovation, and it'll help the Grand do their fundraising, which we think is also a good thing.
Okay. And then also on the agenda, another one of our quality of life assets in the community is the Pollock Community Water Park. And, it was several years back that this water park was put together, and it's time for some updates and some maintenance, and I believe that this item on the agenda addresses that.
Yeah, this is repairing the plastering and the restoration for the leisure pool part of Pollock Community Water Park. And the Community Foundation, the Oshkosh Area Community Foundation, did the funding that got this going in the first place. But the other great thing they did was they set up a fund to get some of these things replaced and repaired as time went on, so that they knew that ongoing maintenance was going to be very necessary. So this $402,000 bid award is being funded completely by the fund that the Oshkosh Area Community Foundation set up. So it will keep the pool in good operating order for many years to come, and it just demonstrates the generosity of our community when it comes to supporting youth activities, family activities, and we're happy that we're going to be able to get this improvement done for the water park, and looking forward to seeing what it looks like when it's all done.
All right, and we'll have more information coming up in a upcoming episode where we talk about opening the water park and all of our summer activities. Okay, then a little bit later in the agenda we have an item. We are looking at an automated system for Go Transit.
This is something that transit staff talked to the council about a couple meetings ago, and this is really about a way to help people who may have limited means, but they can't afford a monthly pass. But what they can do is we can keep track through their usage when they've hit the max for a monthly pass, and then enable them to continue to ride free for the rest of the month because they've already paid the fee for a pass. And there's other security measures that are built in there. It's being used very effectively down in Milwaukee. So we're doing a cooperative purchase with the city of Milwaukee for this fare collection system. It'll make it much more convenient for people to buy passes because it'll all be done electronically through this fare collection system. So we're excited about it and look forward to getting it all implemented.
Okay, very good. And then at the very tail end of the agenda, we have a closed session, and I believe this relates to the Oshkosh Arena. We don't often talk about the closed sessions, and I guess if you could give us a little bit of insight as to what this discussion might be about.
Sure. Well, as many people know, that the arena is on the market by the owner of the arena, Fox Valley Pro Basketball, and we've gotten a couple inquiries from people with questions, and I'm trying to read into what some of the questions involve, and a lot of them involve our development agreement between the city and Fox Valley Pro Basketball. You've heard me use the term pay-go TIFs, pay-as-you-go tax increment financing. What that does is it returns some of what's already paid in taxes back to the owner, the developer, as an incentive for the work they've done. We're getting a lot of questions about what if scenarios, what if you did this, what if you did that, and from a strategy standpoint, I'd love to whisper it to 66,000 residents, but it's the prospective buyers of this. We want to protect our interest, our financial interest. So we want to talk to the council about what parameters does council want us to set if we are approached, and what types of things we're going to put limits on, to give me some guidance on what I may or may not be able to negotiate. So based on the questions I've received so far, I have a few ideas that I want to share with council and then get their feedback. Can't talk about that in open session because we don't want to tip our hand to prospective buyers because we have to protect our financial interests.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm sure we'll have updates down the road with that and a lot of the other topics that we talked about today. So, Mark, we really appreciate your insights and thank you for being here.
It's always a pleasure, Andy.
All right, and thank you for joining us today. Again, that Oshkosh Common Council meeting is at 6 p.m. this Tuesday, May 14th at City Hall, and that will be live on GovTV. Spectrum Channel 10, Uverse Channel 99, and streaming on YouTube or oshkoshmedia.org. Or you can always listen on the radio, Oshkosh FM 101.9, which is also online, and on the TuneIn Radio app for phones and tablets. Of course, you can also use your favorite streaming device, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV. Just search for the Oshkosh Media app and you can stream the video. You can always visit our Oshkosh Media YouTube channel for government meeting archives and the full library of Oshkosh Media programming. So join us again in 2 weeks for another City Managers Report. Thanks for watching.